It's true, I've bought every single one of the MacBook Pros, M5, M5 Pro, M5 Max, and a surprise that you'll hear about in a minute, because I was curious what's the actual difference and which is actually worth it, because the price difference is huge, and some of them are worth it and some of them aren't. I've actually also included the M4 Max to see how that would compare in the benchmarks as well. But most importantly, if you think that you're looking at just the Geekbench and Cinebench scores will tell you the whole story, you've got another thing coming, because I've seen wildly different results depending on your workflow, so make sure that you see all of the results before making a concluding decision. So which models do we have here? As there are base and upgrade models that I have bought and tested. If you want to find out if the base or upgrade are worth it, there's other videos out there that you can check out. All of these are upgraded models that I have here. I've got the M5 with 32 gigabytes of RAM, M5 Pro with 18-core CPU and 20-core GPU and 24 gigabytes of RAM, the M5 Max with 18-core CPU and 40-core GPU and 48 gigabytes of RAM. And finally, the M4 Max with 16-core CPU and 40-core GPU and 128 gigabytes of RAM. And no, the 128 gigabytes of unified memory does not skew the results or give the M4 Max any benefit. I've tested that already, video out there. If you haven't seen why the size of a MacBook is important, then go check out the 16 versus 14-inch video. But for the M5 and M5 Pros, we're using the 14-inch, and the M5 Max, or the Max chips, because the 4 is here as well, they are on the 16-inch. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty and the benchmarks. In fact, I'm going to start with a little bit of a geeky one, but bear with me, you'll understand what I'm doing here. I want to test the power draw. If we know how much power these chips are running through, then we know if Apple's actually cheating or they've done some innovation. Because if you want an upgraded or more powerful version, it's easy to push more power through because that usually means more performance. But the real breakthrough in technology is when the power levels remain roughly the same, but we're getting massively increased performance. Now, in other videos, I'm also showing you sustained power, but in here, we're just focusing on the maximum peak power. So when looking at the M5 power draw, we can see that the M5 is massively lower than the Pro and Max chips. Quite a bit more. Interestingly, the M5 Pro and Max peak performance is very, very similar, but the sustained power on the M5 Max is a lot higher. So the 18 cores on the M5 Max, they're not exactly equal. But what makes this graph very interesting is compared to the M4 Max, you can see that even the M4 Pro is pulling almost 50% more power than the M4 Max on peak, which is a massive difference. So you can see that the green graph on the CPU is a lot lower, which is insane. And if you're looking at the GPU, here the power increase is only a little bit. And you can see that the M5 Max only pulls a little bit more than the M4 Max. So we'll see if we see the same results in actual benchmarks. Looking at Cinebench R26, and we can see that the M5 Pro is about the same in single core performance. In fact, all of the M5 devices in single core performance, very, very similar. But in multi-core performance, there is a huge difference. The M5 Pro is 66.4% faster, which is absolutely insane. And the M5 Max is literally more than double the performance as the M5. So from 10 cores to 18 cores is more than double performance. That is amazing. Now the M4 Max slots somewhere between the M5 Pro and M5 Max, so somewhere over here. Moving on to Geekbench 6 to see if we've seen similar results. The M5 Pro is about the same, and M5 Max, interestingly, in single core performance seems slightly faster and is the fastest in the bunch here. But multi-core performance, 58% faster in M5 Pro, and then on M5 Max, we've got 63% faster performance. The M4 Max is about 44.5% faster in the multi-core performance compared to the M5. Now, the very last column, what you can see there is the M4 Max versus M5 Max, which tells us that the M5 Max is about 8% faster in single core performance and about 13.4% faster in the multi-core score. So that is quite a bit. Now let's take a look at the GPU. In the GPU performance on Geekbench 6, we can see that the M5 Pro is so much better than the M5. So the Pro really deserves its name. 82% faster in the OpenCL and Metal scores. It is a huge jump up. The M5 Max is 202% faster in OpenCL and 200% faster in the Metal scores. That is just a lot faster, a huge jump up. The M4 Max here is quite a bit faster than the M5, but the more interesting thing is that the M5 Max is about 20 to 26% faster than the M4. And Apple was saying that the AI performance obviously is something that they're focused on because everybody's AI everything. Looking at the AI performance, especially the GPU performance, because on the GPU cores, the new M5 devices have a neural engine which should help the AI performance or your local models or whatever you're doing on the GPU. The M5 Pro is hugely better than the M5, about 45 to 53%. The M5 Max takes it pretty much to double the performance. But when comparing the M4 Max to M5 Max, the M5 Max is about 37 to double the performance on the quantized scores. So really, when we're doing quantized scores, the M4 Max is quite a bit slower. That shows that the AI performance on the M5 devices really is pretty good, if that's what you need. What about the creative professionals and some of the workflows? And this is the bit that most people start to skip and thinking, yeah, I've already heard what I need to hear, but this is where things get interesting because you realize that in actual specific workflows, it's not exactly everything that you've just seen in the first part of the benchmarks. So in Photoshop, we can see that the Pro is actually the same as M5. So if you're doing Photoshop, perhaps just sticking with M5 because it's as good as M5 Pro, and the M5 Max is about 10% faster, but that's about it. I would say not worth the money. The M4 Max is slightly faster than the M5. So if Photoshop is your main workflow, then decide very carefully which Mac you should get because most likely you're going to be wasting some money. Moving on to Lightroom Classic, and this is where things get, again, different. If Lightroom Classic is what you're using as well as Photoshop, you've got a little bit of a difficult decision here now because M5 Pro is 50 to 63% faster than the M5. M5 Max, interestingly, for some reason, performs lower than M5 Pro here. And believe me, I've done like 5 to 7 tests, cut out anomalies where test is either too fast or too slow, and then calculated the average. The M5 Max, for some reason for me, just performs slower than the M5 Pro. And the M4 Max is obviously quite a bit better, but the M5 Max is only 5% faster in the standard overall scores and 14% faster in the extended overall scores. But if we look at the Sony extended test, then the M5 Max is quite a bit slower. You might be wondering, why is that? Well, because Apple's doing quite a lot of new things on their new M5 devices, and bear in mind, in your workflow, it might not be fully supported again. Even though it is Apple Silicon, their new supers and non-super cores and everything that they're doing on the GPU as well, the software needs to keep up with it, and that's why sometimes you see something like that. Now, moving on to video editing, and this is where I get quite excited. The M5 Pro is 65 to 70% faster in the extended and standard scores. So the GPU that you have on the Pro has much better media engines, and it really is a lot better. The M5 Max takes it to a whole other level again, and it is quite a bit faster than the M5 Pro. You can see we're more than double the performance on M5 Max as we are on the M5. So if video editing is something that you're doing, it is hugely different, especially the GPU performance and so on. If we're comparing the M5 Max to the M4 Max, you can see that the M5 Max is 14 to 24% faster in the overall scores. That is a huge difference between the two devices in the overall scores. Because if you remember the very earlier benchmarks, individual CPU or GPU benchmarks, they didn't seem that big of a difference, but now in the actual application, actual workflow, the M5 Max, there's a huge difference, 24% faster. That's amazing. I don't think even Apple said that there is that big of a difference. So this is more than what we've seen from Apple between the two M5 Max and M4 Max performance. So that's real good news. But After Effects now. Here, there's some weird things going on. Firstly, the M5 Pro is slower than the M5. That's probably because of the neural engines on the GPU and on the Super and other cores. Again, we're seeing some weirdness going on. So when you're actually using it in your application, you might encounter some glitches until Adobe releases some updates. And we can see that even the M5 Max is actually slower than the M5, which doesn't really make much sense. The M4 Max, again, as you can see, performs quite a bit better here because it's just more optimized and it's just had time to mature on the platform. So this is another example where we can see that the new stuff that Apple's doing perhaps isn't working in all of the workflows, but by the time you're watching this video, it might be fixed. So make sure that you update your After Effects when you're getting your M5. What about DaVinci Resolve, which is often very well optimized for the Apple Silicon and for video editing? The M4 Pro, huge difference, 44 to 54% increase between the M5 to M5 Pro. The M5 Max, again, a whole other level. We're getting 80 to 108% increase in the extended overall scores. That is more than double the performance on the M5 Max compared to the M5, which is insane. Now, what about the M4 Max and where does that line up with the M5 Max? The M5 Max here gets between 20 to 25% increase in these overall scores. And the AI scores, for example, that you see on the very bottom is 82% faster on the M5 Max compared to the M4 Max. So those neural engines on the GPU cores really help with some of the AI stuff. So if you're doing AI masking or tracking on DaVinci Resolve, then the M5 device really helps with that. DaVinci Resolve has quite a few AI tools inside that help you track or mask, even noise reduction when you're doing some of the things. Well, that's not necessarily AI, but you'll see a huge performance increase, as you can see in there. What about 3D now? In CPU Blender performance, the M5 Pro is basically double the performance as the M5, which is ridiculous. And then the M5 Max, interestingly, is only a little bit better than the M4 Pro. And then the M4 Max is actually slower than the M5 Pro, which is insane. In CPU performance, the M5 Pro is actually faster, and that's unbelievable to really see here. But the M5 Max is about 11 to 26% faster in the CPU performance in rendering there. In GPU, the M5 Pro is, again, more than double the performance, as you can see on the M5. Huge difference. So the GPU on the Pro makes a huge difference. The M5 Max on a whole other level. We're getting almost double the performance from Pro to the Max, so 20 cores to the 40 cores is insane, almost double the performance, which is pretty nice linear scaling. The M4 Max is somewhere in between, and the M5 Max here is quite a bit better compared to the M4 Max. You can see 30% in Monster Scene, pretty much double the performance on Junksub Scene, and 57% faster in the Classroom Scene. So 3D rendering is a lot better on the M5 Max, which is amazing. I've got Redshift here as well. And checking the performance difference, M5 Pro, we've seen similar performance difference, about 74, not exactly double the performance. M5 Max, more than double the performance, absolutely ridiculous scores, 266% increase, which is mental. And then the M4 Max is somewhere in between, about 30% faster on the M5 Max compared to the M4 Max, if that makes sense. Now, the conclusion comes in different parts. Firstly, battery life and power delivery. The M5 devices are pulling a lot more power than on the M4 family under load. So expect the M5 battery life to be lower than on the M4 family. If you're someone who just needs the best battery life, the M5 14-inch will be the best battery life device on Apple's lineup. And if you're not doing anything more than basic video editing, the M5 is the best option for you. When it gets to more demanding workflows, developing, 3D, video, then we'll have to sacrifice some battery life for the performance. And here's which device I would recommend you to get. But very importantly, what no one really tells you is that Apple actually has 3 power modes on all of their devices on these laptops. And even though you get the same performance whether you're on battery or plugged in, there is a difference which mode you're actually using. There is the low power mode, automatic mode, and high power mode. Automatic mode is not the same as the high power mode, which on the M4 devices was very, very similar. On the M5, that is not the same, as the high power allows more power to go through the chip because the fans kick in faster, allowing it to cool better. And low power mode just cuts the performance a lot to save battery life. I hope that makes sense. So when you're using the laptop as a workstation plugged in, put it on high power mode because you'll just get more performance. But then which MacBook should you get as the final of conclusions? The M5 Max is the best MacBook Pro Apple has ever made. But the increase in performance is not as big as on the M4 versus M3 family. And we're gonna give up some battery life. And in some ways, this is going backwards, but they truly are amazing, hands down. These are the best creator laptops that you can buy. But which one is the best for you then? I would say that for online browser workflows, photo and basic video editing, the M5 is the right one for you. And it's got the best battery life that beats the MacBook Airs or anything else out there. The new Neo, nowhere even near it. Upgrading the M5 to the Pro, you'll get a significant boost in video editing and 3D. The GPU makes a huge difference, but I would highly recommend upgrading the RAM on the device from the 24 gigabytes because that is a bottleneck from the get-go in your workflow. I can see a lot of swap being used and it's not really enough for most people. I'd upgrade the RAM before upgrading the chip, if that makes sense. But a one-time chip upgrade and one-time RAM upgrade would be the M5 Pro sweet spot. The M5 Max is for people who want the best and is truly remarkable. In fact, a lot of ways unbelievable. Subscribe if you'd like to see it compared to the best Windows laptops and desktop PCs. There's some interesting stuff to uncover. The 48 gigabyte upgrade is a good option for most people and should be the minimum for when upgrading to M5 Max. If you're earning a living as a video editor, I'd highly recommend upgrading the RAM on the M5 Max to at least 64 gigabytes. You'll thank me later with your future workflows. In fact, even current workflows. Congratulations! If you've reached this part of the video, you're in the top 13% of people's attention graph. And there's more than 50% chance that you seeing this means you're not subscribed. So consider subscribing, hitting that bell icon, liking the video. It would mean a world to us. If you'd like to get detailed access to our internal benchmark database of CPUs, GPUs, SSDs, and so on for creators, then may I invite you to sign up to our newsletter where we send out relevant information a couple of times a month when there is information. I'm not interested in flooding your inbox. This is when there is good information to share for your creative workflow. Then we'll send those emails out. And also you'll get the most exclusive access to some of the behind the scenes, perhaps even giveaways. So scan that QR code or link in the description below. If you've got any urgent questions to me personally, you can always reach out on Minect. I'll always get back to my messages. If you're looking for a new hoodie, may I recommend this one. This is not just any cheap random hoodie. This is a high quality hoodie that you can get. And when purchasing this, we get a small little kickback to help us build what we're building here. My passion is to help creators choose the best tech for their workflow and help them save some money in the process. This is Tech Notice, and if you've reached this part of the video, you have been upgraded to the top 5% of the people who ever see this part. And now YouTube thinks that you'll like this video, and if you haven't subscribed, you can do it on this side. Thanks very much guys for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.